been terribly harsh on the ANC since 1994. But what if the ANC hasn't actually been running South Africa since 1994?
Yeah, well, if that's the case, ladies and gentlemen, then we've been talking shit about the ANC and misunderstanding it for the last 25 years, which, to be honest, is highly possible. Because, Ramon, what I have started to wonder of late is how many of the ANC's policies are shaped by foreign NGOs. Because when you actually look at it, the NGOs in this country have a significant influence. We have the white paper, ladies and gentlemen, and if you look at the NHR, it was funded as a study by Bill and Melinda Gates and their foundation. Now, you may look at it and say, well, when did that study get done? Well, I'm glad you asked, ladies and gentlemen, because it was done during the Polokwane elective conference, whereby Jacob Zuma won the nomination to run the ANC. And would you know it, he won on the ticket of Thabo Mbeki not understanding the AIDS virus and causing loads of deaths because of his views. Bill and Melinda Gates came to Jacob Zuma's defense, and right after he got elected, would you know it, they came out here and said, we've got the cure. Hey, Zuma, just do what we tell you. Take all of our funding, and hey, presto, you're the savior.
Now, ARVs for everyone in trying to solve AIDS was a very huge shift away from the ANC prior to Jacob Zuma. Thabo Mbeki famously said HIV doesn't cause AIDS and was mocked mercilessly for that. Whether that is true or not, we have no idea. We are not scientists. Actually, a lot of scientists aren't scientists either these days. But anyway, this is a very good example of Bill Gates having quite a lot of influence in a direct ANC policy. The treatment of HIV/AIDS and the entire medical system of South Africa. Both of those things, one could argue, has been influenced unduly by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So if that is in fact the case, and we are correct, what other policies could have been influenced by people who are not the ANC?
Absolutely. And if we actually look at it one step further, then we can say, actually, at the weekend, there was this other thing that happened. The ANC Youth League had a conference, the first one since Malema trashed a hotel and then got expelled from the ANC. Well, one of the actual speeches, done by a lady named Adil, came out and basically used a shit ton of globalist talking points, my friend.
So climate change cannot be taken off the agenda, nor can climate justice. South Africa's renewable energy potential is amongst the best in the world. Comrades, the just energy transition must be fair, it must be equitable, and it must be sustainable for future generations.
The problem is, Ramon, to have good economic freedom, we need cheap and reliable electricity. And let's face it, what is the cheapest and most reliable way to have energy? Well, coal and nuclear, which they're not pushing. Strange, that.
It is very strange. It's almost like Cyril Ramaphosa and the Youth League are speaking from exactly the same handbook. He did call on them to become more militant, whatever that might mean. Maybe he wants them to threaten people and force them to vote for the ANC next year. But fundamentally, since when did the Youth League ever agree with the old people of the ANC? Basically never. Right? The Youth League was always more extreme and more communist and just purely divisive. But now they're like, yeah, just transition for everyone because it will empower the youth. No, it won't. You can't go from being a militant communist and saying, yeah, green energy for everyone, which is funded by the West. That makes no sense whatsoever. So obviously not exactly coming from the Youth League itself. Someone else put it in there for them.
Yeah, and so we left to ask the question, who the freaking hell is pushing this agendas? Because Uncle Gwede came out on the weekend and said, hey, guys, I really want to solve this electricity. I know how to make us even more powerful than the US. But none of the policies I'm allowed to do. I want to frack the Karoo. They say no. I want to go drill for oil. They say no. He says, I want to get more coal in the power stations. They say no. He says, for freak's sakes, I wake up in the morning and have oatmeal for breakfast. They say no. He says, NGOs come out there and just seem to stop me from just doing my job. What the hell am I supposed to do? And you know what, Ramon? I agree with Uncle Gwede. These guys are just controlling the country in order to make Africa reliant on the West. And the ANC should be pushing against this agenda, being deeply nationalistic, looking after the wealth and the well-being of South Africa and its citizens. So why is it pushing Western ideals? Unless these Western ideals are capturing the ANC, and the ANC is deeply captured by foreign NGOs.
I mean, let's think about it. The ANC wanted the NDR at all costs, which was the nationalization of everything. Nelson Mandela gets released from prison. He goes to the World Economic Forum in 91 or 92, and he says, we're not going to nationalize. We are neoliberal now, very neoliberal. We're going to privatize. We're going to cut taxes. We're going to do all those sort of things. That happens. And Becky rides it. We get 5% growth. All is in order. But how do you, as a socialist communist party, have the same ideas for close to 60 years, and then you change it in a heartbeat as you're about to get into power? Either you get bribed a lot of money, or you are captured in some way. It's impossible to think of otherwise. Like, I'm not for the nationalization of banks and things like that in South Africa, but just the swift turnaround of opinion almost immediately for a huge organization like that is very surprising.
Anybody who's ever worked in corporate knows something about it. And that is, no one ever agrees on anything, mate. Everybody's always trying to one-up than everybody else. And everybody wants to be like, I've got a shitty idea, and my shitty idea is more shittier than your idea, so trumps, I win. So when everybody comes and starts singing from the same hymn sheet, I have to ask the question, who wrote the hymn sheet? Because this isn't your ideas. And if you look at the ANC elective conference on the weekend, we saw lots of cover revolution, gender equality ideas, all the main talking points that, to be frank, Cyril's been repeating for the last how many years. This is not a youth league with its own ideas. This is a youth league parroting approved messaging. Is Cyril really this captured? Is his government really this captured? And have we really been wrong about the ANC all this time? And all the shitty ideas that we were attributing to them weren't actually their ideas at all.
And let's not forget another example of this is outcomes-based education. This was all the rage in the 90s in South Africa. As we well know, 80% of grade 4 people can't actually read for meaning. But outcomes-based education was implemented in South Africa in the late 90s. But it was created in the 80s, according to something called the Washington Accord. Now, Washington doesn't seem to strike me as being somewhere in, Pietermaritzburg or the Free States. It's the Washington of the United States we are talking about. So maybe our entire education system is also an idea that was pushed by people who don't live in this country. And we have reaped the benefits, if you want to call it that, for the past 20 years.
Well, the thing is, Ramon, we see this even in the gun rights legislation. Even in the gun rights legislation, we see that all being pushed by foreign governments like the Institute of Security Studies, which is based in New Zealand, and lots of European NGOs push the gun rights legislation in South Africa. And they all say to us, well, in England, we got rid of our guns, and look, we're a gun-free utopia where everybody kills each other with machetes. But let's not talk about the loud part out loud. But at the end of the day, they try to say, well, if only we just copied European legislation, then we'd be like Britain. Yay! Because that's what we all want, right? Just be a copy of Britain and France. I mean, France really looks appealing right now, right? Imagine having moved to France during the Durban riots. You went there for your new job. Oh, safe I'll be.
Yeah, not great in the slightest. So, fundamentally, the question you need to ask yourself watching this video is, how many of these proposals from the ANC over 30 years have actually come from the ANC itself? I'm starting to think very little of them actually originated within the ANC. Perhaps the fair majority of them came from influences outside of the ANC, and the ANC just wasn't man enough to say no. They were just part of the grift. They got bribed in some way, and they would say, yeah, we'll push it along for you because, well, we've got nothing else to do, I suppose. But if that is the case, I'm not going to apologize for the ANC for calling them all sorts of names for the past 30 years. But it does change your perspective on who actually runs South Africa. And it could not be the ANC at all. And that's a scary thought.
And ladies and gentlemen, you may look at us and say, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You boys are just smoking some ANC juju. Well, actually, Ramon, I would actually say that there is actual proof that there are members of the ANC that do go against the script in the form of Uncle Gweezy. Because the minute he came out and deviated from the script and said, I'm not signing this European rubbish. I'm not doing this energy bullshit. It's not in the best interest of the country. Why aren't we doing energy that relies on coal and nuclear and so forth? Everybody said, you can't trust the guy. And the hit pieces came out long and fast. Whenever anybody breaks the script, the media apparatus rises up and goes against them. Why? because they're not singing from the hymn sheet, Ramon.
And to understand why Uncle Gweez is a hero, why not check out this video?